Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today it's time for video number 13 in my Beginning Gardener series. And it's one of my favorite ones. This is seed starting. We've covered everything you need to know in the previous videos on how to choose the site for your garden, whether or not you should grow in raised beds or in ground, how to know what type of plants to grow, and also actually went through purchasing your seeds and storing the seeds. Now we're ready to start the seeds. This is what all of this work has come down to. So we are going to be starting seeds today. The last video I did, which was video number 12, was talking about pots and seed starting mix. This is the Espoma seed starting mix that we talked about, and we're going to start our seeds in these Epic 6L pots. Now there's a few things that you do need to think about before you start seeds. There's another video that I'm going to link up above that talks about how to know when to start your seeds. I have an Excel spreadsheet on my website that covers dates of planting. It covers everything you need to know about starting seeds, and so I will link that down below in the description. That's on my website, in my blog, in the introduction to the Basic Gardener series. So you can download that and you can learn all sorts of different things about starting seeds. The other thing you need to think about is what size pot to start in. Now I like to start in this size pot. They're a little bit small. The reason I like to start them small is it's better for your seedlings. If your pot is too big, then you run the risk of either letting your seed dry out too quickly or keeping it too wet and having it die of fungal diseases. When you start out in the small size pots, you do end up needing to transplant up into a bigger pot, but it's easier to water your seedlings. So before we get into showing you how to plant your seeds, let's show you what seeds we're planting and talk to you a little bit about why we're planting the ones that we chose. So right now it is mid-February and I have had this kale, my Swiss chard, and everything started really early. We started this in December, so I could grow these indoors and harvest them indoors. These are just my extra ones. You know, I have a really hard time getting rid of extra seedlings, but these are the extra seeds, and these will go outside as soon as I can actually get them into the ground. Let me show you the ones I've been using indoors. So these are the seedlings I've been growing indoors and harvesting off. This is Chijimisai. We've got chard back here, and we've got a bunch of different kales. Now all of these will be able to be put outside and used in the garden. If you haven't started any earlier than this, this is the perfect time to start your chard, kale, and Asian greens. Now because I've started most of my Asian greens and chard and kale already, I'm not going to be starting any more today. What we're going to be working on instead is we actually will do more Chijimisai, and we're going to look at our cole crops. We're going to start some cole crops. I really love kohlrabi, and I'll link a video up above on the harvest I just did today. I harvested some kohlrabi out of my hoop houses today in my garden. Really excited about that. We're going to try one more time with Celtis. I grew this last year. This is a really interesting Asian kind of lettuce type plant that you grow for the stalk. It was really, really bitter last year. I want to try it one more time and see if starting it earlier will help it not be so bitter. We're going to try some Chinese pink celery. We're going to do collards for the very first time. We've got our cabbages. We've got a red cabbage down here, different types of cabbage. And then we've got our cauliflowers. We've got a couple of different white ones. We've got some purple ones. This is the De Purple hybrid. We've got a green one, and then we've got the clementine, which is yellow. Other things we're going to start is are our herbs that take a longer time to grow. So we're going to start some ashwagandha, and I'll link a video up on the top on ashwagandha and what that's like. Roselle I'm about ready to give up on. We have cuttings of roselle back there. I took cuttings out of my garden of my roselle plants. They're growing beautifully, but they didn't flower this year like they did last year. Last year they flowered inside and I was able to harvest the calyxes. Roselle starts to flower when the day length gets shorter, and somehow last year we were able to fulfill those needs. They can't flower in the garden here in Utah because our season is too short. So I'm going to try one more time and see if I can get them to flower indoors. If not, then I think that'll be the end of roselle. We're going to try a new herb called wood betony, just because that sounds fun. And then I start my stevia every single year. I grow that by seed, and it needs to It needs to start early because it takes a while to grow large enough to transplant out. And we're going to do some ground cherries. This is a different kind of ground cherry. It's called Golden Physalis, and it needs a long season to ripen. So we're going to start it early, transplant it up into gallon pots, let it get as big as possible before we transplant it outside, and hopefully we'll get a harvest this year. We're going to start some pansies so that we can plant those out early. And then we're also going to start some snapdragons because they take a little bit longer to grow, and also you can put them out and you can also put them out before your first fall frost. Now, just so you know what supplies I have, this is my seed starting mix. We're going to use this to sprinkle over the seeds if necessary after we planted them. We've got my seeds in a tray. They're on the wicking mat that we discussed in the video just before this one. And we're not going to add water into the tray till the first leaf appears on our seedlings because we don't want to cause any damping off. And then the other thing that we have is our vermiculite to sprinkle over the top of the seeds. That helps prevent damping off, and it also improves germination rates. And we've got our humidity domes. Now, the other thing that I in particular need is my garden plan, because I have this horrible habit of starting way too many seeds. So I will look at my garden plan, and I know that I really only need 6 of each of the kohlrabi and the cabbages. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with the cabbages, and we're going to do 2 of each variety. We've got our tags here. This is one thing that we did not talk about in my last video, but you do need tags. It really helps so that you know exactly what you planted, and it helps to have the tags written out first. So we're going to move the soil aside a little bit. Let's actually look on the back of the seed packet and see. It says depth 1/4 inch. Now, I'm not really particular in making sure everything is exactly 1/4 inch. I just eyeball it. But we know that that means that this seed does not need light to germinate. It needs to be buried deep enough so the light doesn't reach it. So we're going to open this up. This is what our seeds look like. And we're going to put 2 seeds in each hole. Now, the reason I put 2 seeds in each hole is just to guarantee that if one seed does not germinate, we'll at least get something coming up. And then what we'll do is we're going to practice self-control and remember that I don't have enough room for a ton of cabbages. Oh, and look what I've already done. Guess we're going to have a ton of cabbages. I was only going to do one side of this as the glory of however you pronounce that, but I actually already filled up the entire tray. So we're going to put the tag there. You know, there's always somebody who's going to want cabbages. So, do you know what? Maybe we'll just do this one, and we'll leave this one for another time. I need to be really careful about how many seeds I plant because I end up trying to squish them in because I don't want to give them away either. Maybe I have a hoarding problem. I don't know. So the next thing we're going to do is the kohlrabi, and I know I want 6 of those. So those also, they're just like cabbages. They need to go 1/4 inch deep. And you can find that information on the back of your seed packet. They look just like cabbage seeds. So 2 in each hole now. Now, because I want to keep the cole crops all together, let's do 3 chiji-misai because I already have a ton of chiji-misai out in the garden and inside. So we'll do 3 new chiji-misai, and then we'll do 3 of the collards. I've never tried collards before. Don't know if I'm going to like them. So we're going to do the collards on this side. Let's get my kohlrabi tag there so we know. Collards are also cole crop. They look just like the cabbage and the kohlrabi. Stick them in there 1/4 inch deep. Oh, now one thing I almost forgot is my red cabbage. So this is Red Acres cabbage. Now we're going to start with the cauliflower. We're going to do this yellow clementine cauliflower. Let's add this to the cabbage because I can only fit 9 cauliflower in my garden this year because I want to do 3 of each variety. So now we're going to do the Chinese pink celery, and as you can see it says 1/18 inch. So it needs to be 1/18 inch deep. So what that means to me is it probably needs a little bit of light to germinate. So we're going to take a little bit of the seeds. We're going to sprinkle them lightly over the top of the soil. And then we're going to cover them with the vermiculite. I'm going to tamp them down in the soil a little bit so that they have good contact. And then when they're covered, they'll be covered with the vermiculite. So we'll see if that works. Next, we're going to do the celtis. We're going to do just a tray of those. Now we're going to get into our herbs and our golden physalis. So the golden physalis I absolutely love. We're going to do 6 of these. Next is the stevia. Now stevia does take a little while to grow. It also has a really low germination rate. So we're going to put in more than what we've put in with the other seedlings. And these are expensive seeds. They're very, very tiny. They have a very low germination rate, and you've got to put quite a bit on the soil, in the soil, to make sure that they germinate. So this is what the seeds look like. We're going to sprinkle those just to make sure we get a good germination rate with them. Put these expensive seeds back in their container and cover those up. I've grown stevia for years, but I've only started it from seed for the past couple of years, and it's worked really well. Next is one I've never tried before. This is wood betony. Let me read this one does not have a lot of information on it. Let's see if it has information down here. Okay, it says barely covered seed, tamp firmly and keep warm, evenly moist, and in the light until germination. So this one needs light to germinate. So I won't mess up the soil. This is what the seed looks like. We're going to put our tag in here. Sprinkle them over the top, and we'll cover them with vermiculite. And next we're going to start the roselle. These need to be buried pretty deeply. We're going to do roselle and we're going to do ashwagandha at the same time. I grew so much ashwagandha last year that I have plenty for to last me throughout the year. But because it was so much fun to grow, I do want to do 3. I do want to do 3 more. So this is the roselle seed that I harvested last year from my own roselle. We're going to put those pretty deep. We're only going to start 3 of them because we already have the cuttings ready. We'll plant our cuttings outside. And here's ashwagandha seed that I saved from my ashwagandhas last year. This also looks a lot like pepper seeds. So this flat is ready except for the vermiculite. Now like I said, we sprinkle vermiculite over to prevent damping off. It keeps the seedlings evenly moist, and then it also helps aid in germination. I think it aids in germination because it keeps the seedlings evenly moist. Now I do not add vermiculite to my potting soil. I take that back. I tried it once and it just holds way too much water for my pots indoors. So this is basically just used to put on top of my seedlings. Now my potting soil was pre-moistened and it's pretty moist, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to water these in really well. That's also going to just make sure that we have good contact with the soil. Now that they're well watered in, the next thing that we're going to do is just put the humidity dome over the top. Now my humidity dome doesn't seat down to the tray. but it sits really nicely over the top of these pots, and that's good enough. Now, another reason I like having individual pots for individual varieties or varieties that are really similar is because as these germinate, I'm going to be taking them out from under the humidity dome and putting them in another tray. We don't want to leave the humidity dome on too much longer after they've germinated because we don't want to spread any fungal diseases. So let's pull out one more tray. I'm going to show you another way to start seeds. Now here's a tray where we already have some seeds started. These are my spinach seeds. And spinach I really have been having a hard time with. I have a difficult time getting them to sprout. So one way that I found is the paper towel method. And if you look really carefully, it's getting stuck to the paper towel. But we have a spinach seedling right here that is already germinated. So the way I transplant that, so I just go in, dig into my soil, take this little seedling, stick it into the soil, and tamp it down, and leave the green growth at the top. So we're going to pick a few more of these out. I've got some spinach seeds in here, just kind of trying it out and seeing if we can get any of them to germinate without starting the paper towel method. So far we've got nothing in this tray right here. So let's try this one right here. We've got one that's just barely started. Let's bury that and see how that works. So in he goes. Let's see if there's any more started. Yeah, these spinach seeds really seem to have poor germination rates. That's a lot of seeds with very few that are actually started. Tuck that guy in there. Make sure he's covered up. Yeah, this has been about 3 weeks, and this is what we've had so far. So let's put those back into their plastic bag, and we'll stick that back under the lights and see if we can get more germination. So now I wanted to show you something else. Now these pots have been under lights on a mat with water in it for quite a while. You know, it's been about 4 weeks, and you can see that there's algae forming on the surface. Now the algae really does not harm your seedlings that much, but it is a sign that this has been too moist for too long. Now what I'm going to do is just mix that algae up into the soil, and we're going to put vermiculite over the top after we plant, and that will stop the algae also. We don't have very many snapdragon seedlings. I don't know if you can even see them. They're very, very tiny. These are going to be the snapdragons over here. Now, if I remember correctly, snapdragons need light to germinate. So we're just going to sprinkle these over the top of the soil. So this is the Potomac apple blossom. So I think this is Potomac yellow. Yeah, so we got apple blossom and yellow. So let's take a few of these, sprinkle them over the top. This is the apple blossom. Next, we're going to do pansies. We've got 3 beautiful varieties. I absolutely love pansies or Johnny Jump Ups. This says to surface sow. That means they need light to germinate. So I think we're going to do 6 of each variety. I love to put these in the shady areas all in my front yard for early spring and late fall. I've got a lot of those up at the top there. This is called Chicky Chicks. Isn't that cute? The Historic Florist Mix, which is really pretty. Our little seedlings are under lights. They're ready to go. You don't really need to have them under lights before they germinate. But I actually like to keep the lights on because once they start germinating, if I miss it, even for a few hours, they'll start to stretch, and that makes for weaker seedlings. So there we have it. Gardening season 2023, early spring crops, all started. So if you have any tips for growing seedlings that I've missed, please put your comments down below. I'd love to hear how you start your seedlings and what you start them in. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. If this video has been helpful, please like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.